a firm need to decide how to distribute their surplus, and in order to achieve this dividend policy, a firm has to take or to know about these sections. So the learning outcomes I have highlighted here, where we are going to uh, which I'm going to take you through. So the first one is, what is dividend policy? Like I said, a dividend policy is simply, now let's say we got a surplus of 100 million. We need to decide, am I going to give this entire 100 million to the shareholders, or am I going to reinvest this entire 100 million to the entire 100 million to the for the own management to reinvest for the company future? For example, if there are positive NPV projects, are we going to reinvest and increase the value of the firm, right? So these are the decisions that you need to take. So that's why we said uh, it's about paying out earnings versus retaining or reinvesting them. So these are a couple of questions that we may have to decide. Are we giving a high payout, or are we giving a low payout, or are we giving a stable and an irregular dividend? For example, payout means from your total earnings, how much we are going to pay. So are we going to give like 80%, 90% of that for the shareholders, or we are giving like 20, 30% to the shareholders? Or the dividends are whether to be stable, or uh, like giving a like a fixed dividend every year, or we are giving a irregular dividend where certain years high dividend or certain year low dividend. And how frequent are we giving, like once a year, or are we giving interim dividends? Like that, there are decisions that you may have to take. And also, uh, are we going to announce our policy? So these are a couple of questions you may have to address. So moving on, we need to see what are the main factors affecting a dividend policy in an organization. Just keep that in mind. There is no standard um, rule or there everyone will follow. This dividend policy is unique from organization to organization, and there are many factors affecting in order to decide this policy. So, in your opinion, what are these factors which may affect a dividend policy? Why a firm is paying very high dividend? Why a firm is paying low dividend? Why some companies are do not paying any dividend? Any particular reason? There are a lot of factors affecting to this dividend policy. What do you think? Yes, it's depending on the profitability of the firm. Now, for example, if you have a low profitability or low surplus for this particular financial year, then obviously you will not be able to pay a good dividend, right? So therefore, definitely you need to consider what is the current profitability, and also looking at the uh, future cash flows. For example, if you have good uh, NPV projects, or where you have good opportunities to invest in the future, that means there is a chance that you can pay a good dividend. But however, if you don't see much prospective projects, then you are considering whether I should pay the dividend. So therefore, profitability, the current profitability, and also the potential projects of the firm is very important. Any other things? So, as you correctly said, there are two things: current profitability and the future projects. So next thing is type of shareholders. What do you mean by type of shareholders? I have just given a couple of examples for you to understand. When you say type, now every organization is, especially when you talk about these large organizations or listed firms, you have so much of shareholders, and when you have all these shareholders, in the annual report, they will basically give some additional information, the structure, their shareholder structure, how many shareholders are there, how many are institutional, and how many are individual. What do you mean by institutional? It's simply the shares are owned by another organization, another company. Individuals means like you and I, the shareholders who are going to buy your shares, general public. So, what is the impact of being an institutional shareholder and an individual shareholder? Because institutional shareholders or the another let's say you are taking Singer Sri Lanka their shareholder structure, there may be 3% invested by a bank. Right now, if you take example of all the banks in all the private banks, there are at least 4 to 5% is invested in EPF and ETF. Like that, you see there are institutional shareholders. So the nature of them is they're looking for a uh, long-term relationship, and they are always concerned about the future, not just the present, not the just the short term returns. So they want to have a long term relationship of the company. So so how it will affect the dividend policies? Let's say you have a long term shareholder who is trying to continue with your business. They are not concerned about short term profits, but they are looking for a long term relationship. So if you have more institutional shareholders, you are not really concerned whether you should pay dividends. If you have good projects, you will always think of investing or giving the priority for them rather than giving to giving to your current shareholders as dividend. So so that matters when it comes to the policy. So if you have so much of the individuals, you their main objective is to get a return, your quick return every year, a fixed dividend. So therefore, you may have to pay a higher dividend, giving a higher dividend policy if you have more individuals. But if you have more institutions, you may think of giving priority for reinvestments. Now, how it's going to be young and old will have an impact. For example, if you have more of your individual investors are very young age, they also concern about a long-term relationship. Maybe they are expecting the company to increase their share price or to get capital gains rather than looking for a every year profit. So they prefer the share price to go up to get a capital gain versus a dividend. So so that's their uh, majority's view. But however, if you have a old crowd where a lot of people are, let's assume, pensioners, their objective is to get a every year dividend rather than a long-term capital gain, obviously with their future prospects. So therefore, when you have more old uh, investors, then you need to change your the dividend policy compared to having a lot of young shareholders. And I've just said family also, it also matters when it comes to dividend policy. Here I am referring to some organizations, as you know, their majority of the shares are owned by family members. Family owned, even listed companies are there like that. Right, so now if you take an example like Abans PLC, and then if you take companies like um, Swarna Mahal and mercantile investments. The more of family members are in such organizations. So therefore, the nature is they know each other and they know closely what are the opportunities available for the firm. So they will always prefer a long term relationship with the organization rather than just every year profits. So if you have majority of your shareholders are family owned, their intention is just not to just get the money and go away, but to reinvest and reinvest and to increase the wealth of the shareholders, their wealth, and to get more capital gains for the future rather than giving a dividend. So therefore the composition of the shareholders, especially there are different types, will have an impact on the dividend policy. So let me take you through the next point, the foreign shareholding. It's another section that I want to highlight. Some firms in Sri Lanka, you have a huge foreign shareholding. Let me give you a couple of examples. If you know the multinationals which are listed in Colombo Stock Exchange, uh, all these organizations will give an idea like Dialog, AIA, and then we have um, Nestle, we have Ceylon Tobacco. Like that, we see some multinationals in Colombo Stock Exchange. And the nature of these multinationals are majority of their shareholdings are owned by their foreign shareholders. The main stake is with foreign. So, and if you look at their dividend policies, if you carefully would watch their dividend policy, they used to pay a very high dividend. Their payout ratios are very high compared to their earnings. They used to maintain like 70, 80, and 90% payout ratio. So, for example, if you generate 100 million of profit, they will distribute around 80 to 90 million to their shareholders. A good example it comes to my mind is Chevron. Chevron is one of the largest oil and gas companies in the world, and when they came to Sri Lanka, they over these years they tend to pay a very high dividend. Once in 2003, they paid 300% dividend. What do you mean by 300% dividend? So basically, three times of your current earnings they paid as dividend. Three times of your current earnings. Now you might think, how on earth you got 100 million? How they are going to pay 300 million of dividend? Simply because they had a lot of reserves over the years. So they want to boost their share price and the shareholders' confidence, and they used to pay very high dividend over these years. So all these companies which I told you have been paying very high dividend payout ratios. So simple reason, anybody would like to tell me why they used to pay a very high dividend versus if you take the local companies like large group of firms like John Keells, Akin Spence, Haymas, Haley's, Softlogic, Expolanka, all these are diversified large conglomerates in Sri Lanka where they used to pay a moderate or a low dividend payout. Why did you think the foreign shareholdings, uh, you companies which have a high foreign shareholding used to pay a very high dividend versus local firms to pay a low dividend? Any particular reason? What do you think? Yes. Yes, anyone would like to comment? This is a very interesting area, even you can think of doing research on that. So one of the main reason what they say is now if you look at all these companies, especially the multinationals in Sri Lanka, whether we can take Frontera, whether you can say AIA, all these organizations in their domains or in their market, they are the either they have a monopoly status or they are the market leader. If you take Chevron in the lubricant industry, they are the market leader. If you take example like Nestle in FMCG market, they are the market leader. If you take Unilever, again, um, in a lot of day-to-day products, they are the market leader. If you take example of Frontera, they are the market leader in the milk powder market. They're about 75% from Anchor and another almost 10 to 15% of Ratti. So a lot of people don't know Ratti is part of Anchor. It's another brand name. So when you combine, they hold the majority or the market leader in the milk powder market. If you take about Ceylon tobacco, they are the market leader in tobacco or cigarette market. They are not the market. They are basically the monopoly. They get supernormal profits out of that. If you take the example of insurance, life insurances, a leading player in the insurance industry is AIA. And if you take Dialog in the telecommunication industry, they are the market leader. Now, if you look at all these organizations, they have been the market leader. So, what do you mean by a market leader? They have already maximized their potential. So, every year when they generate their profits, since they have been already been the market leader in their industries, the possibility of having more positive NPV projects are less. And also because their majority of their percentage is owned by foreign stakeholders, they want to repatriate their profits to their countries. So when they give a very high dividend, the majority of their dividends goes back to their own countries. So that will basically flow our local funds to other part of the world. So that we need to have an understanding, whether it's Coca-Cola, whether it's Pizza Hut, whether it's KFC, whether it's Burger King, most of these foreign brands, for either from a franchise or from profits, it will go out from the country. So, so therefore, when they want to recover their cash, now they always take Sri Lanka as an outsider. So they have done a major investment to this country, and they need to recover their money. So we learn this payback. It's like a payback. You have invested, so they need to recover their investment. So how they do it? They will simply giving a very high dividend payout, so that majority of their earnings will go back to their mother countries. So that also have an impact on the dividend policy. Another key thing that we need to understand is the competitor dividend policy. What Dialog is paying is impacting Mobitel. What Maliban used to pay as dividend will have impact on Munchie. So therefore, competitor dividend policy also plays a major role when it comes to deciding your dividend policy. Tax policy, this is again another important thing. Now, as you know, dividends are also taxed. We call this withholding tax. So when a country has a very high tax rates in terms of their dividends, the shareholders would not prefer to get more dividends, because a majority of there's a higher percentage will fall going back to the government. So in such situations, the shareholders may prefer to have capital gains rather than getting a um dividend. Why I always say this capital gain means your share price to increase. So we will discuss in detail in the future. When you take an example of certain funds, rather than giving to the shareholders, if you reinvest, then your company's future profitability will go up, and the value of the firm will go up, and then automatically your capital your share price or the value of the firm will go up, which will lead to a capital gain. So people sometimes prefer not to pay much dividends but to get capital gains, especially when you have high tax rates on the dividends. And also the management attitude, it also plays a major role in the deciding the dividend policy, what the management think about dividends. So if the management think, okay, majority of our shareholders has to be given some benefit rather than looking for a capital gain, such organization will maintain like a stable policy irrespective of their investment plans. So they will ensure that every year they will pay a dividend for their shareholders. But some management they think, okay, now our core objective is to maximize the wealth. So for them to maximize the wealth, whenever the opportunity comes, we need to think about or give the priority for that and not to pay high dividends. So depending on the attitude, the policy may be decided. Right. Okay. So I'll quickly touch on couple of dividend policies available uh, in the industry. So we'll start with zero dividends. So simply zero dividend mean don't pay dividends. Keep that in mind. Even zero dividend policy is also maintained by some firms, especially if you are at your early stages in your business. Your directors or the shareholders have decided, okay, we are not going to get any dividends. Whatever the earnings, we will be reinvest in your organization for some time until the company is much more stronger and expanded. Or there's something called constant dividend policy. So the word it gives you the idea. Every year we are going to pay a constant dividend. Now, for example, some organizations are famous. Now, I'll take an example from CSC. If you take Jana Shakti Insurance, they are famous of maintaining a constant dividend policy. They used to pay like a 1 rupee dividend for every share. So if you own like 10,000 shares, you know every year you might get a 1 rupee dividend like an assurance. So that will also depend on management attitude as well. So then you can also compare, okay, rather than investing in a fixed deposit, if I deposit as if I invest as shares, I'm getting like, okay, for 10,000 I'm getting uh, let's say for example for 10 rupees share I'm getting a 1 rupee dividend, so I'm getting like a 10% every year. So rather than opening a fixed deposit, I will be better off investing in shares because I'm getting a dividend of fixed dividend of this, plus I will get a capital gain over the period. So companies maintain. And then some things we call this constant payout ratio. Constant payout ratio means like it's not a uh, not like a value per se, like a 1 rupee or 2 rupee. It's like to maintain the percentage. For example, okay, like I said, keep a 10% from your always from your earnings. 10% is paid to the shareholders, or maintain like a 40% or a 60% payout ratio. And then another stable policy with signaling. So we will discuss what is signaling theory in the future. But what I want you to understand is always you tend to give a stable and a growing dividend. So if you pay like 2 rupee last year, you may pay like 2.5 rupees. It shows the shareholders that the firm is stable and growing. And also finally the residual dividend policy means simply based on the opportunity. So if you have more opportunities, you give the priority for future investments. But if something is remaining, you will give it to the shareholders. We call the residual dividend policy. Now keep that in mind in financial management or corporate finance. You might think, okay, what is their perception or what is their recommendation? So from a financial management or corporate finance perspective, residual dividend policy is what they recommend. Always give the opportunity to invest, reinvest. So because if you have more positive projects, that will increase your wealth in the future profitability. So give the priority for that. And if you have something remaining, then don't keep that, give it to your shareholders. For example, if you have 100 million profits and you don't have positive NPE projects, some companies still keep that money idly. But the residual dividend policy says, okay, fine, if you don't have positive NPE projects, still don't keep your money, distribute everything to your shareholders, right? Everything, so that at least the shareholders will be happy. So in that way, you can see there are uh, quite different type of dividend policies available in the market. Right, okay. Now we'll try to quickly highlight what is dividend irrelevance theory. Now I just want you to just tell the theoretical background. This is a pretty old theory. It's coming from Modigliani and Miller. In this book, who are actually one of these management corporate finance gurus in the world, what they are trying to simply say is a firm, when they got 100 million, let's say, as their share what do you call this, wealth or the surplus at the end of the year, you have two options, and whatever the option that you take will not have an impact on shareholders. What do you mean by that? Whether you pay this entire 100 million to your shareholders or whether you reinvest this entire 100 million to the firm, they say it doesn't matter. That's why they say dividend is irrelevant. Whether you pay or whether you do not pay does not make a difference. That's what they are trying to prove. I know it's not going to be very clear because in the real world it's not the case. That's why if you see the last point, this is based on unrealistic assumptions. Because in this book they refer, okay, this theory to be applied, there should not no taxes or no brokerage fees, or your capital markets has to be very efficient, like that there are the information will be freely available, there is no there's no cost for your information, like that there are so many assumptions, but because it's not practical in the real world, uh, this will not be applied. So what they're trying to say is, I'll just try to tell you the basic of this entire book in 1 minute. The dividend relevance theory says, uh, the argument they say is, okay, you have 100 million this year profits. If you invest this 100 million to for future project, of course your profitability, the future potential will go up, and also it will help you to increase the value of your to buy more assets or invest in a company, and your shareholders wealth will increase because of this reinvestment, right? So therefore, as a shareholder, when your value goes up, your share price will reflect there, and what you had was, let's say, uh, your share price was, let's say, 50 rupees, that will increase by 10% uh, to 55. So you get a capital gain because of that. So you got, let's say, a 5 rupee share capital increase, or the company can give the entire dividend amount to the shareholders today, maybe 5 rupees for every shareholder, and make their shareholders happy. So two choices: either you can get your cash as dividend 5 rupees, or if you invest your the share capital, um, the wealth of the firm, or we call this value of the firm, will go up, and the shareholders confidence will go up, and that reflect in your share price. So either way, either your share price will go up from 50 to 55, or you will get a 5 dividend. So it doesn't make a difference. That's what they are trying to say. So whether you pay the dividend or do not pay the dividend, it doesn't matter. That's what they are trying to prove. But like I said, it is not realistic in the real world because these assumptions are very unrealistic. So completely against this irrelevance theory, we are learning something called a bird in the hand theory. They sometimes they call this is dividend relevance theory as well. So it's the opposite of, completely opposite of dividends irrelevance theory. So what do you mean by bird in hand? The word, it gives you an idea. It's better to have something what you have with you rather than thinking about what is what you don't have at the moment. So rather than thinking about the birds which are in other trees, it's good to think about and be happy of the bird that you have in your hand. So always you need to think about your current dividend rather than future capital gains. Now, as you know, if you look at Sri Lankan context, we never know what will our share price or share market will perform. Sometimes the company may be performing really well, but because of the market, the pestle factors, it may be political, it may be economical, because of international situations, your share price will also move. So even sometimes the company is performing, but your share price is going down. So you can't really plan or really have a confidence that you will have future potential gains, future capital gains. So therefore, sometimes it's better to have your dividends today rather than thinking your future return. So that's what it simply says. So you need to consider what you have or what you have. So shareholders prefer to get today's dividends, current dividends rather than future capital gains. Okay, so just to quickly, now we have been discussing a couple of theories. Now if you can see there are two things I said. First one, dividends are irrelevant. So that line of thinking is investor doesn't care what is the payout. And the other hand, the opposite, they are talking about birds in the hand theory. Investors always consider high payout today rather than for a future capital gain. So we need to know, what do you think the most accurate one? Hmm? What do you think? What do you think? Any of your ideas as a rational investor? What do you think out of these uh, two extremes, two concepts? What is more relevant into today's context? Okay, so I'll quickly highlight now. When you look at the empirical studies, still there is no clear conclusion about what is the best. However, keep that in mind, it's all situational. It's how the managers are going to take decision with the current situation. And therefore, they need to really, like I said, they need to really see the factors around you, like what kind of shareholders you have, what is their percentages, and what is their expectations, and about your attitude and your competitor policies, and then your company profitability and future potentials, your tax policies, and all that you will have to consider, and then you need to take a judgment on your dividend policy. Right. So again, as I told you, these clientels, for example, I was talking about different type of groups, like all investors, young investors, institutional investors, individual investors, foreign investors. This is what you call these clientels. So based on the clientels, you need to give a preferred dividend policy, right? Because that will have an impact. So if you didn't customize to them or didn't motivate or make them happy, they will basically sell your shares and think about buying for another investment. So therefore we should not hurt them, but also we have to look their expectations. Right. Okay. So we talk about the dividend, residual dividend model. As I told you, first give the priority for your capital future NPV projects. And if you don't have anything, if you have anything left over, give it as dividends. Right. So that's very important. And then if you have, now when it comes to residual dividend policy or model, we have a equation to follow. So let's quickly have an idea. Sometimes a firm may need to decide or have a question, uh, how much of dividends that we should pay. So this model will give a clear indication, right? But then again, it's just a tool. It gives you like a hint for the managers how much of dividends that you should pay. but keep that in mind, it is not the formula. So what they say is to get the total from your dividends you can generate by total income minus target equity ratio into total capital budget. Now the total capital budget means how much of investments that you are going to plan, investment decisions that you are going to make for the next financial year. So keep that equation in mind. So target equity ratio into total capital budget. So let's try to understand by looking at this question. So I would like you to take 2 minutes of your time, take a piece of paper, and try to resolve this quick question. You have a capital budget. That means you are planning to spend 800,000 next year. And with your current capital structure, you have 40% of debt, 60% of equity. So basically your equity percentage is 0.6. So this is what you are going to maintain. And your forecasted net income, that basically your profit generated for this year, is going to be 600,000. The forecasted one, the profit that you are going to generate is going to be 600,000. Now the question that we need to decide is, okay, if we are to generate 600,000 income or as the net income or the net profit, how much of dividend that we should pay by applying this simple equation. So again, look at the capital budget, look at the equity ratio, and look at the net income that you have generated. So I'm going back to your equation again with this information. Right, so quickly apply to this question. So you have your capital budget. For the previous one, total capital budget is 800,000 and the target equity ratio, like I said, 0.6. So multiplication of each other will tell you how much you need to retain in your business from your profits. How much you need to retain in your business from your profits for your future capital investment. So that will tell you, okay, when you keep that, the remaining would allow you to pay for your shareholders. Yeah, so if I quickly go through the answers because of the time. So 800,000 is your capital budget and the equity ratio, as I told you, it's 0.6. So which means you must retain 480,000 for within your organization for your future projects. Okay. Right. So you need to maintain 480 for your for your future projects, but you have generated only 600,000 of net profit. So from that, if you keep that 480, what you can pay as dividend is 120,000. So if you tell as a percentage, yes, you have 600,000 uh, earnings, and from that you are going to pay dividends only 120,000. So as a payout ratio, the theory suggests that you need to maintain a 20% payout ratio. Whether you are applying it for the real world is it's up to you, but then the theory says, okay, your payout ratio should be 20%. This is just to give you a hint for a manager to take that dividend decision. Everyone is clear? Please raise your hand so that I can move to the next question. If anyone have a doubt, uh, you can ask me. Okay, so hope you're clear. So let's move on. So the same information, if I put it into another context, we'll try to see the differences. If your net income instead of 600 it dropped to 400, what will happen? If this income, the 600, it is reducing to 400. Now, as I told you, our requirement is 480,000, but you have got return only if you look at this information, you have only 400,000, right? But you need 480,000. So that means you cannot pay any dividends. So that's why your dividends are going to be zero. Suppose another situation, your profitability, or in other words, your profits has increased to 800,000. So if that profits went to 800,000, now again you have high for 800,000 and your requirement is same as 480,000. So if you minus 800,000 by this required capital that you want to retain, you are going to have a opportunity of paying 320,000 to your shareholders. So if you do the calculation as a percentage, you have an opportunity to pay a payout ratio of 40%. So you can see it's all depending on the profits. So if you have a higher profit, then you will have a chance of paying a very good dividend to your shareholders. But if you have very small amount of profit, then if you are going to maintain this kind of a policy, you may not be able to pay anything as shareholders dividends. All right, okay, I'm moving into the next one. Okay, how would a change in investment opportunities may affect dividend under the residual policy? Just to give you an understanding, now the same thing what we discussed, the investment opportunity side. How much of now if you take the example, if I go back to the equation, what they say is if you don't have much, so in other words, if you don't have good a very good capital budget here, if it is low, then the amount you need to retain is also less. If you can remember, now let's say being this 800, it has become to let's say 500. If you, the required amount that you need to maintain for the future capital budget is going to be less, which means you can pay more a dividend to your shareholders. So that's what it's trying to say here. Fewer good investments would lead a smaller capital budget, hence a higher dividend payout. But on the other hand, if you this is the vice versa of it, if you have good investments, if your capital budget is very high, then your dividend amount that you're going to pay to your shareholders are going to be shrinked. Okay, so these are a couple of advantages, disadvantages want to highlight. So at least you have an understanding how much of payout that we need to make. And on the other hand, when you are trying to retain money within your organization, it will minimize new stock issue and flotation costs. For example, you don't need to issue more and more shares. Flotation means issuing shares to the public. So if you are issuing more and more shares, that's also not a good option. So it will minimize it by retaining your own funds, right? But then sometimes when you retain like that, as you see, there are situations that you are not going to pay any dividend. So that's also dangerous. So that's why it says it will give you sometimes conflicting signals to the clients, and shareholders will not be happy with that. So therefore, there's nothing called the perfect policy. This is just a hint for a manager to take a dividend decision. You don't need to 100% relying on it, because that says because it's a bit rigid. That's what it says. So you don't need to 100% rely on it, but you can take it as a one tool to understand your uh, amount that you should pay. So these are a couple of steps that you can think of if you are going to think developing a dividend policy for your company, like understand your future needs, look at your capital structure and your required annual equity needs, and based on the residual model you can think of a payout ratio, and it's all depending on the variables that you are going to take in terms of the capital and then the expected growth rates and things like that. So these are a couple of uh, factors that you need to consider before setting up a dividend policy. Even the factors that we talk about at the beginning will also have an impact on this. So let me just quickly highlight some few things about stock repurchase. I'm sure you have heard about them, but I just want to highlight before I wind up this particular dividend policy. Stock repurchases means simply we are going to buy shares of our own. Now, what do you really mean by own stocks? Now, this few years ago, Laugh Gas company, um, they went for an IPO. That means they went for an initial public offer, and they become a listed firm. And after some time, when the stock market was down, when the share prices were low, they buy back their own shares. For example, the company is going to buy shares of their own. So Laugh Gas is buying their own shares, which was in the secondary market, in the stock market, and buying it. Now you might think why they are doing it. It was illegal in some of the countries for certain reasons. Even in Sri Lanka it was the same, but now it is a legalized option where any company can buy their own shares. Now why they are buying it? It's interesting to know. The first one is, now sometimes when you instead of giving like dividends, sometimes you might think, okay, why not buy our own shares? Especially when you have a lot of profits in a certain year, you might think of buying your own shares rather than paying or giving to the shareholders. And also, if you get a major capital gain by disposing some of your assets, let's say you sell one of your uh, strategic business unit or some of your main machinery or major fixed asset, and you got a major cash inflow. So one option you can think about in such situations, buying your own shares, right? Or you make a major capital, if you want to make a large capital structure change, if you want to really fine tune your capital structure, you can again buy back your own shares. So sometimes you might think why the firms are doing some. Now just imagine if you can buy back your shares, the amount that you are going to pay as dividends in the future is going to be less, which is favorable for your organization. And sometimes you will have a much more stronger presence. You regain your control. Now if you have a higher percentage in the stock market, let's say we will discuss this in mergers and acquisitions as well. Let's say 40% of your shares are public, so always there's a chance an outside company can take over you. The risk is there, right? So they may take the entire 40% and then they internally approach one of your main shareholder and try to get the 50% and take the control over it. So it's kind of a dangerous. So to avoid that, sometimes they might buy back some shares and reduce these public shares, so they will regain uh, their capital, what do you call, the ownership of the firm. So another two terminologies we call the stock dividend. The stock dividend is a term that I just want to give you an idea. Stock dividend, sometimes they call this bonus issue. It's another word. Bonus issues in stock exchange. Sometimes they call scrip dividend. All these are same. Stock dividend, bonus issue, or scrip dividend are all same. What do you mean by that? In simply says, instead of paying dividends, now sometimes certain years the companies are really out of cash flows. So then, rather than paying dividends to shareholders, the firm is issuing more shares to the um current shareholders. So let's say you have 10 shares as of now, and this year the company is not performing. So rather than giving a cash dividend, they are saying, okay, everyone who has um, 10 shares, we are going to give 3 shares addition or 2 shares addition. So those who originally had 10 shares, now you are going to have 13 shares. So instead of dividend, you are given for the same value, the amount of worth, we are giving shares. But keep that in mind, by doing a stock dividend, a firm's value is not going to be increased, because the value would have been same, but the more shares will be there, right? The stock dividend. But that will have a long-term effect, because if you issue more and more shares to the public, that means you have to pay more dividends for them in the future. So in a long run, it is not an advisable tool. But just to make your shareholders happy in the short run, companies may think about this option. What do you mean by a stock split? A stock split is where you are breaking your current share capital structure uh, and increasing the number of shares of your current shareholders. Now here it says, okay, um, the firm is going to give 2 to 1. What do you mean by that? For every 2 shares that you hold, they are giving another extra share. We call a stock split. Now stock split means, again, um, if I give you an explanation, that this was done in many companies. Um, some time ago, okay, Royal Ceramic did that, and then I'll give you an example how it works. Um, Arpico Finance, where sorry, Richard Peris, they had a share of. They used to have like. Yeah, share price was like 175 rupees some time ago, and they decide, okay, for uh, every share that they used to have, they are going to split it. Split means, okay, that one share is becoming 10 shares. What do you mean by that? One share is going to be 10 shares. So one share used to be 175 rupees, right? Now they split it, that one share, into 10. Let's say I had one share of 175 today. After this subdivision, what happened is, from tomorrow onwards, I have 10 shares. I have 10 shares, but my share price also going to be divided by 10. The simple reason is, now just because there's a share split, the value of the company didn't increase, right? So therefore the logic is, your share price also will divide by 10. However, because of demand and supply, there will be changes, but uh, what happened is, now this 175 share, now each share is now 17.5, right? So if I ask this question, why the companies are doing this, why this 175 share just divide a split to 10, and now you have 10 shares of 17.5, didn't make a much difference. Why do you think that these firms are doing? Any particular reason? So there's a psychological effect as well. On top of that, if you look at the investors, and if you look at the the companies in the stock exchange, uh, we call this liquidity. Most of the trading happens for the shares which are less than 10 rupees, and because you have a feeling that you can buy more shares, and for example, let's say a 10% of 175 is 17.5 rupees, right? Now so the chance of 175 increasing by 17.5 rupees versus a share which is 17.5 rupees going up to 20 rupees. uh, Sometimes look at the percentage. Now 17.5, to increase by 10%, you need to increase by 1 rupee and 75 cents, right? Which means it's a small amount, but for 175 rupee, you need to increase by 17.5 rupees to get a 10% increase. So psychologically, even if you look at the percentages, um, let's say, I'll put it a simple example. One company in stock exchange, there are shares of 30 cents shares. Okay, let's say Blue Diamond, the share is 30 cents. Now let's say in a particular day, this 30 cents, the share market, the share prices are always increasing by 10 cents. Either it go up by 10 cents or reduce by 10 cents. Now if in a particular day, if the share price increase by 10 cents, what will happen? 30 cents share is increasing by 10 cents means 40 cents. Tell me what is the percentage of increase? 30 cents going to 40 cents, that 10 cents increase, if you look at a percentage, it is almost 33%, right? This is same as a 1,000 rupee share is going to 1,330, right? So a chance of 1,000 to go 1,330 versus 30 cents share to go to 40 cents, because if it is to be increased, it has to be increased by 10 cents. So those who have 30 cents shares, right? If you may have 100,000 shares of 30 cents, but the moment it went to 40 cents, your gain is 33.3%, right? So therefore, you can see the percentage. Even the share, when the share prices are small, when they are changing, the impact is high. And always when you have a share price low price, there's a tendency having more shares coming to that the prices which are less. So it's a investor perception, and it's in investor policy or investor trend. So because of that, many companies which has high priced, they are going for stock splits today, so to become more attractive in the market, more attractive in the market. Right. Okay. So with that, I would like to conclude. I almost took a kind of like a 1 hour 15 minutes to describe this dividend policy.